Peace be with you. Assalamu alaikum. Today we have the 7th episode of our summer course. The topic is Healing of Memory and Reconciliation, the Mindanao experience, the cultural dialogue, and the vision of the Prelature of Marawi prepared by Bishop Tudtud. This topic is very dear to me like all the other topics because it's a touching moment and very important experience. And I was lucky enough to invite two of my good friends, but the key person I can say in the Prelature of Marawi. So the focus could be Marawi because we will talk about the vision of Bishop Tudtud of the Prelature of Marawi. For me, this vision is a very important message of dialogue. The two two friends, it's the Bishop of Marawi himself, Bishop Edwin de la Peña, who is also the chairperson of the CBCP Commission for Interreligious Dialogue. We can say he's my boss in a sense. We work together. I'm the second secretary of the same commission, and he has a great sharing. He has been there in Marawi so many years. You will listen. Another great friend is Father Michel de Gigord. It's in France, but many friends know that he has been in the Philippines since 1983, but sometimes he left. He will say also why, but he has a great experience, and he will talk directly of the vision of Bishop Tudtud. Along the way, we discover with this Bishop Tudtud what is the Prelature of Marawi, the great contribution in terms of, we can say, dialogue. Unfortunately, Marawi was destroyed in 2017. We will see also some of this terrible image of the siege of Marawi. All this will help us to understand that indeed we have to work for reconciliation. As Pope Paul of the Sikhs said to Bishop Tudtud when he invited him to go to Marawi, our mission, Pope said, it's reconciliation. And in that line, Bishop Tudtud worked a lot and left a legacy in the Philippines and all around the world about dialogue and interreligious dialogue.
Hello, good afternoon to you all. I was invited by Father Sebastiano Damra, the director of the Silsila, to share my own reflection about the topic that the course is offering this summer, the 35th Silsila Summer Course on Muslim-Christian Dialogue. And the focus is how to transform hate and love and be an instrument of peace in the midst of violent extremism and terrorism. First of all, I am Bishop Edwin de la Peña of the Prelature of Marawi. And I had been Bishop of Marawi, Prelate of Marawi for the past 21 years. So it's been a long time now that I've been looking after this prelature. And also this prelature has been in the forefront of the dialogue movement, interfaith dialogue movement, because we were founded on that purpose, for that purpose of initiating dialogue with our Muslim brothers and sisters. You will recall that many of us recall that the Prelature of Marawi was established in the mid-70s, 1976. And it was the fruit of the discernment of the church in Mindanao, particularly in Lanao, to the ongoing conflict between Muslims and Christians at that time in 1971. And that conflict was even used to justify the proclamation of martial law by President Marcos in 1972. And so that experience of violence among our Mindanao settlers and with the Muslim majority in this part of central Mindanao brought so much pain and suffering to so many people. And so it dragged on for years until in 1974, Bishop Tudtud decided that it was no longer enough to bury the dead, cure the wounded, give food and shelter to refugees. So this was the atmosphere when the group of sisters, priests, and lay people headed by Dear Benito Tudtud, then Bishop of the Prelature of Iligan, discerned about their mission vis-a-vis Muslim-Christian conflict. Tudtud himself intimated later on that they were all roused from their stupor to realize how little they have done to effect change. And so they felt that what they had done so far then was inadequate to address the situation of conflict and violence. And so he took off from his responsibility as Bishop of Iligan in 1974 to go to Rome to study. So this was unprecedented for a bishop, to take a leave of absence of the diocese for that length of time to be able to study. And he wanted really to study Islam. He wanted to understand exactly how Muslims understand their own religion, practice their own faith. And thus, when we talk about Islam, from there, we will always talk about Islam from their perspective, not from our own perspective. That was the purpose of his study. And so, while he was in Rome, he met Pope Paul VI, who was the Pope at that time, in 1975. And when Pope Paul VI knew about the presence of Bishop Tudtud in Rome, he called for him to have, because he wanted to inquire about the situation of the conflict in Mindanao at that time. And so what was originally scheduled for a 15-minute kind of sharing extended for more than 1 hour, because the Holy Father really wanted to know more about what was happening in Mindanao at that time. And so here was a bishop who was in the better position to inform him about the real situation in Mindanao. And so Bishop Tudtud was challenged by Paul VI, considering that there has been recrimination, mutual recrimination between Muslims and Christians, and then fighting was ongoing. And so the Holy Father challenged Bishop Tudtud about the need for reconciliation. And he said, who would be in the better position to offer reconciliation? And the Holy Father said, the Christians should be in that position, that primary position to offer reconciliation to the Muslims. And it's not good always. It's not always good to wait for the other person to be ready to reconcile, but we have to offer a hand of reconciliation. And so Bishop Tudtud said it's very difficult because the experience of prejudice has been deep-seated for Muslims and Christians, and so we are all prejudiced towards Muslims, and Muslims too are prejudiced towards us. And so the Holy Father said, we have to overcome our prejudices. And the Gospel not only urges us to overcome our prejudices against other people, but also the Gospel uh, urges us to overcome our prejudices based on real experience, no? Because prejudices are really judgments that we make about other people, even if we have not experienced negative reactions from them, no? And so Paul has since asked Bishop Tudtud if there is such a group in the Philippines, in his home diocese, Prelature of Iligan then at that time, who could lead this group to offer reconciliation to the Muslims. And he said, the bishop said it would be difficult, because not too many people are excited about reconciling with the Muslims. Not too many people are excited about dialogue with the Muslims, and so he said, if we have to move towards this direction, I have to be part of that group. And if I become part of that group, then the diocese, the Prelature of Iligan then, would be left without a shepherd. So it would be, that would be a difficult situation. And so when Bishop Tudtud came back to the Philippines after his studies in Rome, he met with his consultors in the Prelature of Iligan then at that time, and they came up with the decision that the only way that the vision of the Holy Father could be realized is to divide the church in Lanao into two. The Prelature of Iligan, the mother church, and the Prelature of Marawi. And so they presented this plan to Rome in October of 1976, and then the following month, November of 1976, the Holy in Rome approved the plan to divide the church in Lanao into Marawi and Iligan. And so that was it. It was Bishop Tudtud, in obedience to the will of the Holy Father, to offer the hand of reconciliation to the Muslims through dialogue of life and faith, that created the Prelature Marawi. And so this is our reason for being of the Prelature, to be in dialogue with our Muslim brothers and sisters. And so that dialogue had caused so much misunderstanding even among our fellow Christians, because it was something new. They do not expect that the church would be would veer towards that direction of being friendly to the Muslims, because we had always been keeping a distance from them. And so the people are even saying that maybe this bishop is trying to make us Muslims too, which is not the case really. And so it took us a long time to live with our Muslim brothers and sisters. And then in the late 70s, the clergy of the Prelature of Marawi initially kind of articulated the vision of the Prelature. And it says, the vision of the Prelature of Marawi is to offer reconciliation to our Muslim brothers and sisters through dialogue of life and faith. And so that was it. And that had been the guiding principle of all our pastoral ministry, all our involvements since then. And then in 1982, during a pastoral assembly of the Prelature, we kind of articulated in very lyrical terms the vision of the Prelature of Marawi. And this vision has been the same vision that we have followed all through these years, since 1982 up to now. We thought that there is no need of revising this because this really speaks very deeply about what we are supposed to do in our mission of dialogue. And I think Father Seb is going to talk something about the vision of the Prelature of Marawi. It's quite lengthy reading of the vision, and so I will leave that to Father Seb to talk about the vision of the Prelature. But I'm also happy to say that I was part of the drafting of that vision of the Prelature of Marawi as well. I was a newly ordained priest at that time, 1982, and I was part of this group that drafted it. But it was Bishop Tudtud who really articulated it and put it in beautiful, beautiful language, and that vision is what we have now. And so we offered reconciliation through dialogue of life and faith from 1976 to 1981. 2001. For the past 25 years, we thought that the whole work of dialogue was a waste of time. Some people would say it was a waste of time because all throughout this time, also the pastoral workers of the Prelature experienced so much difficulties, like kidnapping and violent extremism. Two of our priests were killed, Father Rufus Ali in 2001, and earlier in 1970, Father Martin Dempsey was killed in Balabagan, and Father Michel de Jugor was kidnapped twice. Sisters were also kidnapped. These experiences kind of put a kind of break on the momentum that we were experiencing in the work of dialogue. But we continued to work in partnership with our Muslim brothers and sisters who were with us, and were also excited about dialogue, and were also interested in continuing the work of dialogue. But it was in 2001, when we were celebrating our Silver Jubilee, that the real response from the Muslims became evident. They responded to our overtures of dialogue by offering us maligayang Pasko sa aming mga kapatid na mga Kristiyanos. No? Earlier than that, we had Duyug Ramadan. No? This was our program to educate our Christians about Muslims and their cultures, and also being working with them in resolving the problem of the community. And but this time in 2001, they responded very positively about our overtures for dialogue. And since then, the dialogue movement in Lanao has been very strong. And at the forefront of this dialogue movement was Father Chito Sugano. I think we all know who Father Chito was. He was one of those taken from the bishop's house in 2017 by the Maute group, and he was hostage. He was held hostage by the Maute group for almost 4 months. And he worked in partnership with our Muslim NGOs and all the other groups working for community development and dialogue. And it was also then that the work of dialogue became stronger, at that time, since then. And so when the siege of Marawi happened in May 23, starting May 23, 2017, we were kind of given earlier feedback about it, that there is something that is being planned. But, we kind of did not take it very seriously. But our Muslim partners were already telling us that something is not good. Something is bound to happen that is not good for us Christians particularly. And so when the siege of Marawi happened, and we were caught in a position where we were trying to flee from the fighting, and also trying to assist our people who had been displaced. We kind of partnered with the Redemptorist missionaries and other people in the church to be able to create a program for our displaced brothers and sisters, our IDPs, internally displaced persons. And so Tudtud Marawi was born on August 1, 2017. And guess what? Most of our volunteers who wanted to work with Tudtud Marawi, which is an NGO for relief and rehabilitation of IDPs. Most of those who volunteered were Muslim young professionals. 100 of them volunteered to work with Tudtud Marawi, which is a Catholic-based NGO, and because the work is still continuing until finally the IDPs are able to return to their places of origin. The work of Tudtud Marawi continues. And so this is the work of people who have experienced violence, and this is how they turn violence into a vehicle of love, precisely because they have experienced how it was to live with violent extremism. They realize that we really have to work for peace now, because they do not like to live in that kind of situation of violence. And so Christians and Muslims realize that we really have one common enemy, and that is violent extremism. And the only way to defeat violent extremism is for Muslims and Christians to work together. And so the work of dialogue continues, even with greater impetus because of that. And so this is our experience of transforming hate into love in the Prelature of Marawi, with Muslims and Christians working hand in hand, side by side, to be able to deliver the help and support that our people need in this time of crisis. Thank you very much.
Dear friends of the summer course, today we have the pleasure to have on the link from France a common friend. Actually, this friend is Father Michel de Gigord, and probably you will see him in action in some other video that I will introduce. But now it's here present, is living in France, but for many years he was in the Philippines, and his journey was quite interesting and colorful. His mission was especially for the young people, for dialogue, but especially in the place of Marawi. In the course of this mission, he has a lot of experience. My first presentation means I will ask to Father Michel to say something specifically on the topic of the seven topic of this occasion, that is healing of memory and reconciliation, the Mindanao experience, the culture of dialogue, and the vision of the Prelature of Marawi prepared by Bishop Tudtud. Um, Unfortunately, not so many people know this beautiful document, although we did something to popularize this. In the past, even last year, we did something, and also I put this in my book, in the religious dialogue. But we can hear from Father Michel something more. And with this, Father Michel, please, you say to us what you like to say about this topic.
Okay, Sebastiano. Dear students, when Father Sebastiano asked me to speak to you about the vision of the Prelature of Marawi on dialogue, I hesitated a little because I find very difficult to address myself to people when I cannot see them in real. And also because I have never liked speaking sitting down motionless. My hesitation, however, did not last very long. First, because it is quite impossible to say no to Father Sebastiano, especially so when he is a very good friend. And also because it gives me an opportunity to come back to this prelature vision, which I have always considered as one of the best ever written reflection on dialogue. Lastly, if what I am going to tell you helps you, I will be very happy because you are wonderful people. Why? Because anybody who is willing to spend some time to reflect on the meaning and the importance of dialogue is a wonderful person, blessed indeed by God. As Benny Tudtud said, what a delightful treat this world is going to be when we will all really listen to one another. Well, who is Bishop Bienvenido Tudtud? And how did the prelature vision come to be? This is what I am going to tell you now. Bishop Bienvenido Tudtud cared very little for titles, status, and power. So we never called him by the usual titles given to bishops like His Lordship, Reverend, His Grace, and so on. But we called him by very friendly appellations such as Beni, Tatai, and Tatai Bido. Bido being the contraction of his first name, Bienvenido. In this talk, when I will speak of him, I will always use Beni, the very name I always used when I talked to him before his untimely death on 24th June 1987. Beni was born in 1931 in Mabolo, Cebu City, a place with very few Muslims, a place very Christian indeed, considered as the cradle of Christianity in the Philippines. In 1968, he became the youngest bishop of the Philippines as auxiliary bishop of Dumaguete, again a place very Christian. 3 years later, in 1971, he was installed as the first prelate in the newly erected Prelature of Iligan. This was a turning point in his life because it was the first time he lived in an area with plenty of Muslims around. At that time, in fact, the Prelature of Iligan was made of two provinces, Llano del Norte, with some 15 to 20% of Muslims, and Llano del Sur, with more than 90% of Muslims. Beni realized very quickly three things. First, he was ill-prepared for this Prelature of Iligan because he knew next to nothing about Islam and the Muslims, if not for all the prejudices he had learned as a child living in a predominantly Christian surrounding. Second, it was going to be very difficult to act as a bishop of a prelature with two provinces as different as Llano del Norte and Llano del Sur. Third, the situation was quite explosive. So bad was the relationship between the Christians and the Muslims. Remember, 1971 was the year when martial law had been declared by President Marcos. These considerations were followed by a very radical decision. In 1974, Beni decided to go to Rome for 1 year of study on Islam. It is at the end of that year that he went to see the Pope Paul VI. He told him about the very difficult situation of Iligan and suggested to him that the Prelature of Iligan should be divided into two. To cut a long story short, his suggestion was taken very seriously by the Pope, who erected a new prelature, that of Marawi, with Beni as his first prelate. This was on December 8, 1976. From that moment onwards, Beni did everything he could to create a better relationship between the Christians and the Muslims in Marawi. To do this, however, he had first to invite the Christians to go along with him. This was not an easy thing. So great was the animosity between the Christians and the Muslims due to so much suffering and violence inflicted upon each other by both sides. With his very deep spirituality, with his great talent at writing and speaking, and with the example of his own life as a man of great openness to others, whomever they may be, he tackled then the Christian community, instilling in them the desire for reconciliation and forgiveness, repeating again and again the need for the Christians to make of Jesus the model of their lives. He felt, however, that all he was doing, as well as all that was done and said by the Christians who had begun to follow him, had to be put down in a formal way for greater clarity. Key words were already circulating in the prelature, such as immersion, contemplation, kenosis, that is, the need for fundamental humility, powerlessness, the capacity of marveling at the richness of others. But all these concepts had to be put together. it is then that Beni saw the need of a text which would become the foundation of the prelature praxis, as well as the reference to which everyone could come back again and again for study and deepening. Beni thought of calling this text a vision. As he said, a vision is something not yet achieved, something not complete, but something to aim at, a horizon to reach. One of the favorite stories of Beni was that of the horizon people. Day by day, he would say, a man sat on a dune by the side of the sea. And from there, he would look at the horizon. Day by day, he would say, I wish I could see what is behind the horizon, but he would never move. One day, he could not stand it any longer. He jumped on a little boat, which was at the foot of the dune, and he rowed and rowed until he reached the horizon. To his utter surprise, the horizon had moved forward, and there he stood asking himself whether he would move further so as to be able to see what is behind the second horizon. He knew, however, that if he did, he would not be able to see any longer the dune where he used to sit quietly. And so he decided to go back to the dune. End of the story. And Beni said, the immense majority of the people never go to the second horizon. Only those who did can be called horizon people. And he would conclude by saying that only horizon people can be dialoguers. In June 1987, there was a special meeting at Midway in Itao on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of the foundation of the Prelature of Marawi. The first day, Beni gave us a summary of the history of the Prelature. He divided it in 6 stages that he called moments. First stage, from 1971, the year of his installation as the first prelate of Iligan, from 1971 to 1974, this he called the moment of observation, or getting acquainted with what was happening around. Second stage, 1974, was the moment of study in Rome. Third, the years 1974 and 1975, this was the moment of proposing and promoting the dream of reconciliation to anybody of goodwill. Fourth, from 1976, date of the beginning of the Prelature of Marawi, to the year 1982. These were the years of structuring the dream, putting bones into it by the means of multiple meetings, seminars, and times of prayer. Fifth, from 1982, the year of the writing of the vision, to the following years, this was the moment for the vision to seep slowly but steadily into the heart of the whole Christian community and, as far as possible, the Muslim community as well. Last stage, from 1984 onwards. This is the moment of restructuring. Because, as Beni said, there is always more, always deeper, always further in life. And so it is with dialogue. When there is no longer any horizon in my life, it means that I have arrived, reached, achieved, got, attained. That is the beginning and source of all intolerance. Nothing is ever final. To succeed or not to succeed is not the question. The question is to go on and on towards the unreachable dream because it is God's will. This shows clearly that dialogue does not crop us just like that as the snap of one's finger. It needs time to take shape. As Benny once said, true enough, this is a slow way to get things done. But would you force open the bud of a flower? At this point, it is very important to know that the prelature vision is not the work of Benny alone. He would never work alone, which is another reason why it took so much time for the final text to come to life. Let me comment to you this famous vision statement of Marawi. As I see it, it is made of three parts. First, a general introduction. Second, an analysis of the concrete situation in which dialogue is to be lived. And third, an attempt to define what dialogue really is. The introduction goes straight at the core of everything, that is, God's love, which means at the same time, God's love for us and the love we try to have for Him. This love of God is at the source of everything. Without it, nothing really deep can ever happen. This is why the statement says that God's love is the good news par excellence. It is expressed most beautifully in St. John's first letter, chapter 4. Let me quote to you few passages of this chapter 4. God is love. This is love, not that we have loved God, but that He first loved us and sent His Son to save us from our sins. Dear friends, if such has been the love of God, we too must love one another. If Islam does not speak as clearly and pointedly of God being love as such, the statement says that Islam speaks of God as being merciful and compassionate. Are not mercy and compassion expressions of love? Hence, God's love, mercifulness, and compassion are the very basis of everything solid in life. And when Christians and Muslims speak about it to one another, there begins dialogue. This being solidly established, the statement enters into an analysis of the present situation in Marawi. Dialogue, in fact, is not the fruit of some reflections being done in one's study room surrounded by books. It is the concrete response to real challenges experienced in one's surroundings. The statement uses 4 words to describe the Marawi situation: conflict, prejudice, animosity, and elitism. This can be found in many other places and times. But to everybody who has been in Marawi in the 70s and 80s, they sound very much to the point. Against conflict, the statement points out to the necessity of building bridges and breaking walls down. This can be done by curbing down first one's own violence. Against prejudices, the statement points out to the importance of searching for the goodness, the beauty, and the truth that are in others. It uses a very strong argument for this. It says, no one person has the monopoly for this. Against animosity, the statement argues that there is for everyone a need to accept powerlessness and vulnerability, because as it says very sharply, no one can negotiate from a position of power. This is undoubtedly one of the most difficult points of this statement. But I think everybody knows that when you are in a position of power, you always try to impose your own point of view, your own ways of doing things. Then dialogue becomes impossible. Finally, against elitism, the statement says that whoever wants to dialogue is bound to give importance to the poor, the voiceless, and the powerless, if only because these people constitute everywhere the majority of the population. For them, mostly, must dialogue be first offered. If the statement had ended here, it would have been already a very beautiful and very challenging document, but it goes much, much deeper. The last part of the statement is an attempt at defining what dialogue is, not only as a response to any particular situation, but in its essence itself. Not only then what dialogue does, but what dialogue is, whatever the context. And here again, as the statement describes 4 situations in which the dialogue is to be exercised, it now gives 4 characteristics of any true dialogue. First, it demands a deep spirituality. It is not just a technique with its own rules to be followed. If it does not stem from the depths of one's heart and faith, it will not last very long, because the obstacles along the way of dialogue are many and not easy to overcome. Second, dialogue demands a deep respect for the faith of the other, and this is most difficult. As Bishop Pierre Claverie, one of the martyrs of Algeria, said, I think that the presence, the recognition, and the acceptance of the difference in others, be they individuals or groups, is one of the most difficult challenges of life. The first immediate reflex when confronted with difference is mistrust, turning in on oneself, and defending oneself. Hence, the necessity to develop one's ability to see the good in others. Etty Hillesum, a Dutch woman who lived the terrible experience of the Nazi system and ended up dying in the concentration camp of Auschwitz, said once, "The contemplative eye is the one which, free from the instinct of possession and domination, is able to see the beauty of the world and the depth of people and things." Third, dialogue is an offering. It cannot be imposed on others. Neither can the pace at which to conduct it can be forced on others. It requires great sensitivity, patience, and humility. As Benny said, if you believe in what you are doing, you do it because you believe in it, not because you are expecting results, even at the risk of your life. Hence, dialogue is not the result of a calculation. Should I practice it or not? When? How? With whom? You do it and you offer it, kind of instinctively, and never mind if it is not accepted and not understood. Fourth, all this being said, it is obvious that dialogue is a very great challenge on both sides, from the side of the one who offers it and from the side of the one who receives it. It requires strong determination and great courage. This is why the statement ends up in the same way as it began. Everything starts from God, and everything ends up with Him. Hence, the beautiful conclusion of this statement: dialogue is above all a communion of men and women in total surrender to God.
Father Michel, beautiful reflection, and I believe will help our participants of the summer course to deepen this, and we will show to the friends around the siege in Marawi, what happened to that beautiful place, just for a moment, and we see unfortunately what happened in Marawi.
Death, destruction,
5 na sir, 5. Tirahin nyo na sir, 6 to 1.
Sinira-sira nila ang buwan ng Ramadan. Sana maparusahan ang subla pa sa parusahan ni Allah.
despair. We're in a Muslim cemetery in Marawi City. The remains of 27 bodies recovered from the battle zone are buried here. Local terror groups attempt to take over the Islamic city of Marawi in southern Philippines during the holy month of Ramadan. What do they want? Establish a caliphate where ISIS or Daesh will rule. It's war. Filipinos against Filipinos. Soldiers, terrorists, battle over territory and flag. Armed Forces Chief General Eduardo Año vows to use his new powers to defeat the enemy.
We will use the special powers of martial law to defeat this Maute group and other armed groups who have connived to rebel and trying to dismember this part of the territory from the Philippines.
It's an open area here. It's an open area on the right. Upload! Upload. Fire!
Residents flee. The once bustling Islamic city turns into a ghost town. There's no easy explanation for the tragedy that hits Marawi. The clashes start in a village called Basak Malutlut, where the military spots a most wanted terrorist leader and moves in to take him. Bullet holes on freshly painted walls show the intense firefight that erupted in this safe house in Basak Malutlut. ISIS names Isnilon Hapilon its top leader in Southeast Asia. The veteran terrorist leader based in Basilan is responsible for so many atrocities in Mindanao. He has long been the subject of a manhunt. In Marawi, he joins young radicals who grew up in the city. The Maute brothers led by Omar and Abdullah. They all pledged allegiance to ISIS.
Kaya nabigla yung tropa natin dahil nung gusto nilang huliin si Isniron Hapilon, kukunti lang naman yung tropa doon sa bahay na yon. Pero nung lapitan nila yung bahay at pasukin yung gate, lumaban sila. Tapos yung mga paligid na, yung mga bahay-bahay sa paligid, meron din palang mga armado doon.
Hapilon escapes arrest yet again. What happens next surprises the generals. Armed Marawi residents rush into the streets, wave the ISIS black flag, and attack strategic points around the city. They occupy a Maypakpak medical center. They harass Camp Ranao, the military headquarters. They surround the city hall.
Hindi natin pwedeng iwanan ng City Hall dahil there were attempts na gusto nilang pasukin ito and they will take over the...
They wanted to raise the black
yes, ma'am.
flag. They release prisoners at the city jail, set ablaze the Protestant-run Dansalan College and the Catholic St. Mary's Parish. They take hostages along the way, move towards Bangulo, the city's commercial district, where they hold out for months.
Barangay Maria Cristina Balon.
Marawi Bishop Edwin de la Peña is away when the terrorists attack the city. But his residence is packed with workers in the middle of preparations for a Catholic fiesta.
They were ready captives, no, when the terrorists came in.
They take his right-hand man, Father Chito Suganob, and church staff.
Naka-receive ako ng tawag using the cell phone of my secretary. But to my surprise, yung boses ay boses lalaki at saka matapang at saka he was ordering me to do this and that, no. He was giving me his demands, no, na dapat iparating ko sa military that they declare a ceasefire.
The bishop hears crying in the background. The man gives the phone to Father Chito.
Si Father Chito, sabi niya, kami ay na-hostage ngayon dito, Bishop.
The bishop gets in touch with the military and receives instructions to keep communication lines open.
I called back. I was the one who contacted them that I have already relayed the message. Hindi ko na makontak. Wala na. The line was cut off, no?
The armed men also target Dansalan College, a Protestant-run school the Maute brothers attended as young boys. For days, the bishop fears Father Chito is dead, until the 8th day when he appears in a terrorist propaganda video.
Please consider us. We want to live another day. Want to live another month. Want to live few years.
push to end the war in Marawi. Troops close in on local terror groups seeking to take control of a vital city in Mindanao.
Makikita nyo naman na marami sa aming mga kasamahan nag-is ng buhay, sugatan, pero tatapusin namin. Not for the soldiers, but para rin sa mga kapatid natin Muslim dito sa Marawi.
Marawi is one of the biggest, longest, and bloodiest operation of the Philippine military in recent history.
So, dear friends, we saw the terrible siege in Marawi. We know a lot of this sad story. Father Michel already was in France, but for sure the heart was here with us. Now, Father Michel, can you tell us a final statement, message, what you like to say in this occasion to our participants of the summer course?
If I had to say something about dialogue, I would say dialogue is difficult, but dialogue is beautiful. And one thing for sure, I know that all people who are striving for dialogue are blessed by God, because this is God's will, that we should live in peace with one another. We should. I would say also, I am absolutely convinced that dialogue is, if not the most important thing of life, but one of the most important things of life, especially in the world today. We have to witness to people that in the midst of everything, dialogue is possible.
At the end of this episode, I do not have other words to add. Father Michel left us with a beautiful message and inspiration. Bishop Tudtud with a beautiful, we can say, vision, and the witnessing presence of Bishop Edwin de la Peña, who had been there so many years, and with joy and passion and dedication continue to work now to rebuild spiritually the people of the, we can say, Marawi, together Muslim Christian.